What's going on, everyone? It's your boy TOBBQ here with not another music review. Today, we're going to be talking albums, specifically the top 5 albums of the year. Now, when I say top 5, I'm not saying what I think the best 5 albums are this year. I'm just saying that these are my top 5 favorite albums. I never want to speak from a place of objectivity. That's not really what we do here. We just vibe. So I'm just letting you know, like, what did I enjoy the most? Which albums struck a chord with me? Which albums brought me the most amount of joy? Or maybe think the most? Not what I think is critically the best. I don't think I know enough about music to speak from that standpoint. And I also think that music is a subjective thing. Hence, me sharing with you my favorites and my personal top 5. Now, before we get into my top 5, I want to go through a few honorable mentions. I feel like there are some albums that I really enjoyed this year that just didn't make it into my top 5. And there's a reason for each one, but I feel like they still deserve their shine, and there were still albums that I enjoyed that I want to cover. So maybe you can consider it a top 10 because I have 5 honorable mentions, but it'll just make sense once I get into it. First up, let's talk Another Life by Big Time Rush. This was an awesome comeback album. It was really cool to see the reunion of a boy band that was popular when I was a teenager. In that era, there were just so many boy bands that had formed and like they just never lasted. And so anytime, you know, a successful one broke up, it's really sad. So to see them come back and do their thing on this album was a lot of fun. It had me listening for like a solid like few weeks of the summer. I was enjoying it a lot. I really wanted to go see them in concert, but it just didn't work out. I'm sure if I did, maybe they would have been a top 5. But overall, it just made me really happy to see them get back to what they all love doing, making music. Some notable tracks that, you know, I jotted down that I really loved from that album. Ask You Tonight. It's the best song on the album. It clears all. It's so good. Go listen to it if you haven't. It's just so boy band. It makes sense. Forget You Now is a good one. And then the titular track, Another Life, was also really good and a nice change of pace. It was a little bit slower, but all around, had a lot of fun with that. Another honorable mention we have is The Age of Pleasure by Janelle Monáe, another album that I reacted to on the channel. I had a lot of fun with that one too. When I was shooting the video, I was kind of in a limited space, so I didn't really have the freedom to move around and dance like I normally do in my regular setup, but I loved the creativity with that album. I loved how it was a compilation of just so many different genres. There were great jazz elements. There were awesome R&B, of course. There was also some like poppy stuff, reggae stuff. Some electronic pieces. This was the first time I listened to Janelle Monáe, and I was just so enamored with the swagger, the confidence, and the positive energy that was just put into that album. It's about like a sexual like reawakening, I guess, too. So there was just so many like liberating vibes. Like you just wanted to like let go of all your inhibitions listening to that. And it was another one that came out in the summer, so it had a lot of that fun in the sun kind of energy. Some of my favorite tracks from that album, most notably Black Sugar Beach, which is kind of like an outerlude to the more popular song Champagne Shit. So I think we can kind of package those two together as one experience. I really like that a lot. Water Slide was a great song. You could very much hear a lot of the reggae influence in there. I love me some islandy vibes. So nice. And then Paid in Pleasure, which was another like addendum for the song. I think it was called Know Better. I wouldn't say I like that package as much as Champagne Shit and Black Sugar Beach, but I loved Paid in Pleasure because you could feel a little bit more like Afrobeat influence coming in there, which was sensational. All right, so the next honorable mention is Red Moon and Venus by Kaliuchis, and by now I should have already dropped the video for it. The reason why it's an honorable mention is because I just haven't had enough time to listen to it. Like, I really enjoyed it. If I actually listened to it when it came out earlier in the year, I'm sure it would be in my top 5 because it is that good of an album. But yeah, I haven't had the time to let it marinate. I'm not really familiar with like her whole catalog. I know her next album is going to be all Spanish, but yeah, this was a really cool intro to her because I could like feel the Amy Winehouse vibes and like how she was singing. There was like some funkiness to it, and the tracks were very different too. There was so much ambience. This album had a lot going for it, and I simply just think it's one that did not have enough time to marinate, which is sad. Some of my favorite tracks from that were I Wish You Roses. I actually like heard that single earlier in the year and I really liked that. I also loved Fantasy featuring Don Toliver. And then the 2 new ones that I got from the album were Moonlight, which is incredibly popular, and I don't know how like I didn't even hear a snippet of that throughout this entire year, and then Endlessly, Really like that song too. I think there's a theme with a lot of those songs, is that they're maybe a little bit more upbeat than the rest, but that's not to say that the rest of the album is bad. It was a really cool experience. And if you haven't checked out my reaction for that, definitely go take a look. Fourth honorable mention, Larger Than Life by Brent Faiyaz. This is unfortunately the same case as the Caliuchis album. It just hasn't had enough time to marinate. You know, Brent was my #2 artist this year because I was still listening to his old album from last year. He's an artist I love, and part of me wants to put him in the top 5, but I just haven't listened to it long enough to decide like whether or not it was like a favorite of mine. And I don't want to fall victim to recency bias. Overall, I did really enjoy it, and I liked how it had a lighter tone than Wasteland. It definitely felt like he went back a little bit to like his older sound, which some people would love. Some people probably don't like that. They want to see him keep evolving. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other for me. I loved Wasteland because it was thematic, because it was dark. It was kind of like a movie, but I also loved Larger Than Life because it was like a little bit more fun, and there was this insane like early 2000s influence. I mean, it's coming back. That decade's coming back, and I'm not mad about it whatsoever. Some of my favorite songs from that album to check out: Tim's intro featuring Timbaland. I don't know if they sampled his voice or if they got him to actually rap and beatbox, whatever it was. It was just sick to hear him because I haven't heard him in forever. Best Time. The song's only a minute long. Brent gets me mad. He gets me real mad because he makes such good songs that are so short, and it's a frustrating experience, but nonetheless we have the song, and that's something that I can only be grateful for. But it kind of had like that 2000s vibe. Some of the instruments reminded me of You Don't Have to Call by Usher. Check both of those songs out and tell me if I'm right on that. And then Outside All Night, the A$AP Rocky verse was a lot of fun. He hasn't made music in over 5 years maybe, or at least solo projects. So yeah, it was just exciting to see him kind of come back in that way. Also, I forgot to mention that Wherever I Go is absolutely beautiful. Definitely go check it out if you haven't. All right, on to the next one. Our last honorable mention is the Idol soundtrack by The Weeknd, Mike Dean, and all the other featured artists. The reason why this isn't a top 5 album of the year for me is because it's not an actual album. Abel kind of released singles or like EPs almost for each episode. I wish he'd like put them all together in like one big soundtrack, but I found a playlist on Spotify that someone made, and I ran through it myself. But no, I mean, I loved it so much. I love Abel. I mean, you've heard me say it a million times on this channel. I know there's a lot of controversy around the show. People think it had poor writing. People thought it was over-sexualized. Like, whatever your opinions are on it, the music was fantastic. I genuinely enjoyed watching the show because I got to hear original music from my favorite artists, covered music, and be introduced to like other new artists through the show. Do I think it was the greatest show of all time? No. There's definitely like some problems, and it's not perfect, but I was just excited to see one of my favorite artists take on a new challenge and actually create a tangible cinematic experience for his music. A lot of people love his album Kissland, which was heavily inspired by like Japanese films and a lot of like just Japanese media, and people would like equate that album to like a movie. So to see there be an actual, well, in this case a show, but an actual cinematic film based project that came from the music was so cool. It was just cool to see him take on a new endeavor, and whether he swung and missed or hit it out of the park, it was just exciting to see, again, one of my favorite artists in just a new space. I know not everyone's going to be on board with that, but at the end of the day, I can't call it a favorite album because it wasn't an album. I almost forgot my favorite songs from those soundtracks. Double Fantasy, which was like the only thing I played for like 48 hours straight when it came out. Popular with Madonna and Playboi Carti. That's like a Calvin Harris type collaboration. That was really cool to see. And then Like a God, which I don't know if many people have heard because again of the controversy with the show, but that is a fantastic song, and I think all of you should check it out if you haven't. Thank you for bearing with me through all those honorable mentions. Now we can get into the real review. I'm getting relaxed, right? Again, I don't have any harsh criteria for this. This is really just like what brought me the most joy. That's really how I operate. I'm pretty one-dimensional in that sense, but let's jump right into it. So album number 5 for me, The Album by the Jonas Brothers. I know some people thought that this album was a little bit of a sellout, that they catered towards like TikTok with short songs and things like that. Bro, that's just how music is moving in general right now. Everyone's making a shorter version, everyone's making a sped up version, and everyone's making a slowed down version of their songs, okay? So I personally just wouldn't like criticize the Jonas Brothers for that. I loved the collaboration with Jon Bellion. I feel like that took their music to a new level. That's not to say that what they've made in the past, especially the past, is bad. I think all of their music is very enjoyable. But in order to like not make the same shit. They needed to do something different. And collaborating with him on this was that different step. I think I said in my reaction video, such a fantastic move to like drop right before summer because it had just all of the fun like summer vibes going on. And I just kept listening to it over and over again. It was a lot of fun, especially like when I was down at the shore this summer, like with the windows down. It was a great time. I think in my video I said they went 12 for 12, like every song was perfect. I wouldn't say that's the truth today, but genuinely I still love a lot of the songs. I think a lot of the songs on that album are great. My favorites that I've written down, you have Wings, which I don't know, that just gets some kind of energy out of me. I don't know how to describe it. I just love like the fierceness in it, but it also has a softness. It's cool. I like it. Americana, that was a really fun one. You got a little bit more of like the John Bellion presence just with like his ad-libbed voice. And then Summer Baby. I'm pretty sure that song made me like shake when I first heard it, but I just wanted to dance. I just wanted to have fun to that song. How could you not smile listening to that? And I think that's just how I felt about the overall album. It was just warm, whether it was the more emotional songs or it was the upbeat songs. Like there was just a warmth and a joy there. I'm probably gonna say joy a million times in this video, but that's just the vibe. I'm just vibing here. Moving into album number 4, we have Utopia by Travis Scott. Now, I wouldn't say that I actually listened to the songs on this album individually. The reason why this was a top 5 album for me is because I was listening to the whole album in its entirety. Like I found myself running through front to back, especially when I was playing Rocket League. I like to put a little music on to zone in. And I felt like Utopia was such a good album for that. That album just like made me ask so many questions as I was listening to like, what is the thought process here? What inspires a person to like make these kind of sounds and make these artistic choices? One of the coolest things about a Travis Scott album is the intense collaboration. Whether he reaches out or they do, the end result is that people want to be a part of his projects. And I think he leverages his features so well. And I would say as far as my favorite songs go, they all have features. So My Eyes, he sounded like Frank Ocean, but he had Sampha on the track, which... Sampha, man. Seeing him pop up for like 2 lines was just angelic. Fiend with Playboi Carti. I love Playboi Carti. I think it's absolutely hilarious that I didn't even recognize he was rapping in the second verse because he was rapping in like a lower voice, or he had like a lower vocal filter on as opposed to it being his normal high-pitched baby voice. On the chorus though, you just want to like bob your head, like just go crazy. A lot of fun. And then of course, Circus Maximus with Sway Lee and none other than The Weeknd. I think I said it in my video, that had a lot of Black Skinhead vibes, which, you know, is a really exciting song. You can get super hyped to that, but then to just throw Abel in the mix and at the end have really like crazy synths going on with the Mike Dean vibe. For me, it just felt like an extension of what Abel has been doing for the last year or two, just going insane with the synth heavy music. Yeah, I loved it a lot. But I do want to clarify one thing about this album. In my review, I said that the song I Know wasn't special to me and that it was just kind of like a filler. I take that all back because since then I have been bumping I Know. I have been enjoying that song way more than I thought I would be. So I will definitely eat my words on that one. All right, album number 3. This was a special one. Fountain Baby by Amare. Going back to what I was saying earlier about Brent Faiyaz and how like a lot of early 2000s vibes are coming back, this album was that and more. This was a fusion of jazz, Afro beats, early 2000s hip hop, some like what I've been described as riot girl music. Like there was a lot happening here and I enjoyed it thoroughly. There is tremendous creativity coming from her and her production team. Again, this is something that came to me in the summer and it was a lot of fun to vibe out to in the sun and dance, but it's just stayed in my rotation. I just keep hitting it, you know, over and over again. It's just so catchy. There's like different vibes within that album that you can lean on for like whatever you're feeling. If you want to like get up and move, you know, maybe pick some of those like higher tempo Afrobeat intensive songs. But if you just want to vibe out, maybe pick more of like the low key R&B jazzy types. I just felt like it was such a flavorful experience. I don't know how else to describe it. I just really, really loved it. and I'm excited to see what she's going to do next. Some of my favorite songs from that album are Angels in Tibet, absolute insane start to the album right after that little ambient intro. Counterfeit, which has that really strong early 2000s and like Pharrell vibe kind of in the production. And Disguise, I think that's an underrated song for sure. It's like a little bit mysterious, a little bit more low key, but like the Afrobeat is still there. Oh, such a great time. Album number 2, Sunburn by Dominic Fike. This was also a very, very pleasant surprise. I knew of Dominic Fike from Justin Bieber's album when he was featured, and I knew he was from Euphoria. Other than that, I had no idea what his music sounded like. This album was ever changing. There were so many different vibes going on. I just love how he just showed his entire range of what he can do. And I'm sure that's like not even like the parameters. I'm sure he could do even more. There were like angsty vibes. There were super like surfer boy chill vibes. There were deep, dark, depressing vibes. There was kind of like rock rappy vibes. There was just so much happening. And upon first listen, I was so overwhelmed with him coming from all these different corners. Obviously, it's not my favorite because we still have number 1 to get to. But from a replay standpoint, is probably the most listened to album of the year. There was excitement beyond the music for me, though, with this album. Within a week of my first listen and reaction, I went to go see him in concert. I just saw on my phone, like, hey, he's near you. Do you want to come? Like, you can get a discount. And I'm like, oh, Dominic Fike for $25. I loved his album, so why don't I just go see him in person? And he absolutely crushed it. It just felt like he was doing it all. He had a band, but it felt very one-man show-esque because he was singing, he was rapping, he was playing the guitar, he was like fucking around with the vocal mixer to like make his voice sound weird for all the songs where his voice sounds weird. It just felt like he was really earning what we all had paid to go see him do. And maybe that sounds obvious, like that most artists would do that, but I don't think most artists would do that. He even said he's like still on the come up, so obviously you kind of have to like prove your worth and prove that you got it. But I don't know. I just got the feeling that he like really cared and he was taking it just like a step more seriously than most. Going to see that again within a week of listening to his album, I think made me want to listen to the album even more because I just loved his energy. I loved what he was about. I bought into him even further. Even though I love every song on that album, I will give you my favorites. There's Sick, which kind of reminded me of like All American Rejects, or at least whatever that sound is and whatever that era of like punky rock is. Pasture Child, which was crazy Red Hot Chili Pepper vibes, super laid back, super chill. Love that one a lot. And then Frisky, which I think I equated it to Jason Mraz, which I know some people got agitated by. But that's how I registered it. I think it was kind of like the way that he would like sing, but then also rap-ish, but instead of like seriously rapping, he would just kind of like talk through some of the lyrics, which felt a little Jason Mrazzy to me. Overall, though, a lot of fun with that album. And I'm really happy that he's happy with this latest project and that in tandem with his sobriety, like he's just stepped into a new phase of his life and his career. It's getting pretty dark over here. I've definitely been talking for too long, but it's time to get into my number 1 album. The winner of my ears, my heart, my soul, if you will, this year has been Victoria Monet with Jaguar 2. Now, you're probably asking, Tobe, when did you listen to this? You didn't film a reaction for it. All right, listen. I did. Okay. It's still it's still tucked away. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I think I said this in another video. It will come soon. I promise you. I love the album way too much to not share my reaction with you guys. After listening to this album, my initial thought was, holy shit. This woman just made a Silk Sonic album by herself. Obviously there's features, obviously there's a production team, but from a vibe standpoint, she captured it. And I think that's honestly saying a lot because I've told you that Bruno Mars is one of my favorite artists of all time. I was astounded. I was so impressed. Again, and this is a common theme, there was a range of styles in this album, right? There was R&B. There was a little reggae, islandy vibe. There was like the psychedelic funk. There was a little bit of like hip hop thrown in there, just a little bit. There were just different genres all over the place. And she nailed every single one. I genuinely feel like this album is just an absolute masterpiece. It literally says on the album, a supersonic experience. And I've learned that she's been in the game for a long time. So I don't think that she's copying anybody. If anything, she's probably been like behind the scenes of the rebirth of like this funky, you know, retro sound that Bruno and Anderson also kind of spearheaded, and now other people are like trying to replicate. It didn't feel like she was plagiarizing in any sense. This felt incredibly original, and I just think it's a masterpiece front to back. If you have not listened to that album with legit headphones, I would highly encourage you to do so. Start saving money for some good headphones, because this is a different experience. Everything that I have felt from that album was not captured in that first video, which will come eventually. This album has aged like fine wine, and it only came out a few months ago. That's how passionate I feel about it. I know I speak passionately about pretty much everything, but that's how passionate I feel about this album. It's beautiful. It's just so cinematic. I'm excited to share that with you guys, and I appreciate your patience in the meantime. I'm really building the suspense. I just want to say that the 3-song stretch, and these are my 3 favorite songs on the album, ruled this year for me. Stop Asking Me for Shit, Hollywood with Earth, Wind, and Fire. We haven't even talked about that yet. The fact that she got Earth, Wind, and Fire on an album. You gotta have some influence or some purchasing power to be able to pull that off. And then Goodbye. I'll give you a little preview. In my video, I said that Hollywood was the perfect ending to the album. Then I listened to Goodbye and everything changed. That is one of my favorite songs of this year. It brings me back to my life in the 70s, even though I wasn't even born yet. When music flows through you, you just can't explain it. And I just believe the same excitement that I felt from listening to the Silk Sonic album was the same excitement that I was getting from this album. It was just a groove that I caught and still cannot let go of. Maybe I need to invest in a ring light because it's gotten a little dark. But thanks for listening, guys. You know, again, this was just me speaking passionately about the music that moved me this year. I love music that makes me think. I love music that is infectious and that I just constantly put on repeat. I love music that makes me feel, whether that be happiness, sadness, and everything in between. But at the end of the day, the only way I can justify what my favorites are is that it just feels right in my heart. And it's just like, this is what I love this year. So let me know what you love this year and what you found yourself listening to or thinking about or feeling or loving, like however it is that you define what your favorites are. I can't wait to listen to more albums with you guys in 2024. Everyone's saying 2024 is a filler year because, you know, GTA is coming out in 2025. The McDonald's snack wrap is coming out in 2025. So hopefully in 2024, we're going to get some good new music and we don't have to wait a filler year, but we'll see. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Enjoy your holidays and have a happy new year. New year, new you? Nah. Stay real. Stay you. It's fucking dark in here, bro.